Well, we've lucked out today because we're here with one of the dynamic people from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Today we have, I know her as Loretta, but her real name is
Antonia Loretta, afraid of bear, Cook.
And the pronunciation of your name is?
Antonia?
In Indian?
Oh, my native name, or the name I use in the Nation House, is Ampetu Luta Wi, and it translates to a woman who prepares and does the important work or sacred work during the daylight hours of the day, because in our traditions you have two of the gods are the day. One is the day and one is the night, and so in that translation I do things just a little bit after midnight. The way that my old people have done is that the beginning of the day ceremonies begin a little bit after midnight when the stars line up a particular way. So my name is that I prepare and do medicine work or whatever important work that I have to do in the daylight hours. So I'm kin to that god of the daytime. So the nighttime hours go from 12 noon or a little after 12 noon into the midnight hours.
And Pine Ridge Indian Reservation is in South Dakota.
Yes, it is. I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota Nation. Some people refer to it as the Oglala Sioux tribe. There are 9 Sioux reservations in South Dakota, and there are 3 on the outer states of the Dakotas. We have the Oglala that sit in the west, and we sit in a place that the other tribes are like our younger brothers and our younger sisters. And so we have our arms around everybody kind of in a protective way. So if you look at the way that our nations sit in that circle throughout the state, we sit way at the southwesternmost edge of South Dakota. And around to the west of us, to the northwest of us, is the spirit or Assiniboine Sioux at Fort Peck, Montana. And then to the north of them sits the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, partially in Fort Yates, North Dakota, and in South Dakota also. And then over to the northern part of the state, then we have the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. And then when you start at the uppermost part of the eastern side of South Dakota, you have the Spirit Lake Sioux tribe that are in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Then you come back down, there's the Sisseton Wahpeton that reside on that side. Then you have the upper and lower Sioux, what people refer to as Shakopee. It's Shakopee, they say, but it's actually Shakopee. There's a designation with that, it's number 6, and I'm not really sure how that Shakopee comes out. So as it relates to those people. Then you have the Santee Sioux tribe of Flandreau. And then you have to the western or northeasternmost corner, the Santee of Nebraska. And then you come back up and you have the Ihanktua, the Yankton Sioux tribe. Then you have Lower Brule Sioux tribe, Crow Creek Sioux tribe. And then you come back further to the west, and you have the Rosebud Sioux tribe. So you have, there are 12 tribes that make up what's called the Great Sioux Nation.
Wow.
And we work in conjunction with each other, but we all operate with our own organizations. Not saying whether that was good or bad, but in times past, we sit in those places as we are sitting today. And traditionally, the Oglalas outnumber every other tribe. We're probably the largest of the Sioux tribes, and that kind of designates us to a place where if there's hard work to be done, the Oglala, give it to the Oglalas or let the Oglalas do it. So in some ways we're like the parent of all of the tribes, and sometimes that's not a good place to be, because in trying to promote unity in the tribal system, it's really hard because you've got elders, you've got those in between, then you have the youth, then you have the medicine people, both men and women, and you have the treaty people, which are treaty signer families from days gone by. And then you have the elected Indian Reorganization Act governments, which then designates us as separate organizations. So the division is further recognized in there by giving us our own little bits and pieces of the pie and say, here, fight over it, and in our tribes too. Part of the system is that when the omnibus bill or whatever bills that we fall under in Washington, D.C., those things are put together 5 years in advance. What you have, in essence, is a perpetual mode of poverty that exists on the reservation by virtue of the fact that you're asked to put together budgets for operating your organizations 5 years ahead. But when it comes to funding those programs, you don't have 100% funding from government. Per treaty, they were agreed that they would provide the basic necessities, health, good food, those kinds of things that are the basic necessities to our people. But the way that they funded it, even though the exchange of land and the sharing of that concept that we extended a hand to the people, they kind of overran the treaties and decided that they don't have to fund everything. They don't have to fund what they obligated themselves to the United States government in coming back to the tribes and doing right by them. So it's a question of how can we exist in a natural mode the way that we did before, and having to be on reservations and be on these little plots of land that say that we don't have enough for our people. They took the buffalo away from us, and in its place they gave us welfare. So when you look at the sharing of the resources that way, then you can kind of look at how the land grabbing happened, and they took the gold out of the Black Hills, and then they put it in Fort Knox, during the height of the Civil Wars or whatever happened here in the United States. They went broke. So they took the gold out of the ground and they put it back in the ground in Kentucky, wherever Fort Knox is.
Right.
But the idea is that we helped them. We helped them in spite of the fact that the Black Hills are the most sacred land to my people in the whole world. My people believe that the Black Hills are the heart of this world. They're the heart of everything that is. And the way that our people refer to those hills is that it's Wizipka Ogunake, and that means that it's the container, it holds the container of all life, all possibility within that container. And so when you take a look at how life evolved, or there are some of our old people actually say that in Bible times, or the book of Genesis, it says something about the floods that came and wiped out all life on earth for Christianity in their books. But in our ways, there are no watermarks in the Black Hills, and so here you have a way to look at those hills and to say, well, something happened here, and something, and thousands of years of culture are still within that, and yet they've gone in and the government setting that aside and agreeing with us by treaty of 1851 and 1868, they still went in and they still got the gold because they needed to. They didn't have, the United States was broke, and so they needed to do something. So it was excuse me, a godsend for them to find that shiny yellow metal, where our people, that shiny yellow metal also had properties, and it carried within it a spiritual entity, so that when they would make their altars or use, if they found it, then they gave it its own life place on that altar. And so it wasn't anything by which we put any store other than it was also one of the great things that the Earth Mother had to give. So when you take a look at what's going on there today, you know, there's no way to break that cycle of poverty, because for this coming year, all the tribal organizations are going to have to put in their budgets for September 30th. That's when everything goes to Washington, D.C. So they fund programs at bare minimum. And then today, here it is, 2015, but they're still just now getting 2010 money, and that doesn't have to come in at 100%. I think that I would say that looking over that situation, you have perhaps at best, 30 to 40% of what you ask for gets funded. And so what it does is it causes a lot of divisiveness, and those who kind of, we call them hangers around the fort, but actually living close to the centers where they do distribution. In the old days, they used to call it owakpamni, which means they distribute annuities and goods. But back in those days, it was on a fair and balanced and equal way that they do those things. But today, it's whoever comes first, and they serve until it runs out. And what it does is that communal spirit that we grew up as a nation with and in, it was that everybody had enough to eat, everybody could do the work equally and to share in the goods. And so that every family, and by which I mean family, we have what's called Tioshpaya model. And Tioshpaya model means that which you are responsible for on the side of the men and the women, what they do for their families. My grandfather, Chief American Horse, he went to Washington, D.C. back in the day, and he told the commissioners, they came out from D.C. to see him. He told them, "I am a Tioshpaya leader," and it was with honor and respect that he mentions he's a Tioshpaya leader. He didn't say, "I am Chief American Horse." He said, "I am a Tioshpaya leader, and I represent 1,253 people," meaning that those of his blood who are in the same family, the American Horse families, or they had a relationship with the Bull Bear families, or the relationship that they had with all of the ones that married into the family. So he was the one that carried the responsibility of talking for all the rest of them. But it was done through the way of the families giving him that respect and that honor and the privilege to speak for them. So when you talk about Tioshpaya, years ago there was a movie done by, I think Kevin Costner or somebody. They did an epic film back in the 90s called Dances with Wolves.
One of my favorites.
That was actually the story of one Tioshpaya. It wasn't the whole entire tribe.
Right.
So you can begin to see and understand what is Tioshpaya and how important is that to the lines of culture that are best served in our tribes, in our families. Tioshpaya, Tiwahe is another one. It means home, where you do your own individual things. Like this is our Tiwahe, Tom Cook and I, this is our home. Okay, and the other part is Tiognake. Okay, so Tiognake then translates to a place where you put your most sacred. Okay, that again translates to this. But Tioshpaya then means the entire group of family, like my grandpa American Horse. But, I represent that many.
Let's take a minute and we'll meet him.
Okay.
Tioshpaya. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.